He just retired at 28 years. And he looked at me as we hugged at his retirement party. He said, it was gone in the blink of an eye. Just like a roller coaster. It only lasts for a short amount of time. But once you hop on that roller coaster being a senior man, hang on, because it's awesome.
What's up, guys? Welcome back. Tailboard Misfits Podcast, episode number 10. Today, I'm talking with Jess Rodzinka, the true senior man from what I've been told. He's a 27-year fire service veteran out of Central Virginia. He's now a captain, but spent 23 years as a firefighter, currently assigned to a tower at his department. Jess, man, what's up?
How you doing, man? Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We were kind of talking before this, and to preface this entire conversation and just throw a shout out as if he needs it, Jeremy Donch. I know you were on a national fire radio as well as I was, and I was tuned into your episode from my buddy Dylan, and I was on his podcast, and we were sitting here talking, and I just had a thought that had been steaming in my head for the longest time, and it was just about the stuff that's your wheelhouse, the senior man, and I'm not super sure I'm sure we can get into it, but the dynamics of your department, but mine is fairly small. And over the last few years, it seems like we're getting fairly young. And so the problem, and I don't know if it's a problem or not, that we're seeing is a lot of the younger tenured, not necessarily young guys, but less tenured guys are having to step into the role of the senior man. And it's just like this whole concept of how does that happen? How are the younger tenured, the less tenured guys able to do that? Because in the reality of it, they're not senior. I kind of had this thought in my head and labeled it the 2 to 10, right? Because whenever I think about a senior man, I think about them as 15 plus years. The reality of my fire department is we have those guys, but they're few and far between when it comes to like the level of our captains oftentimes are the senior guy when they don't need to be. And that's just my opinion. So we'll kind of get into that and everything like that. But I'm excited for you to be here, and I've been looking forward to this one for a long time now.
I'm excited to be on here. I've been listening to your stuff for a little while. You came out on the map a few months ago to me, so you've been putting out some good messages, and I'm just glad that you've thought about me to be on here.
Well, I appreciate that because it's always cool to hear that. I mean, it's not about me because I'm a nobody from nowhere, but someone told me it's like you're putting yourself out there. So I was like, yeah. In a way.
That's exactly right.
So you work for a department in Central Virginia. What are the dynamics like in that department?
Yeah, so we're growing like any other department. We've recently, and I say by the last 10 or so years, we've taken on the role of EMS in our department, and that's obviously new for us. New as in our department, but just as the need arises in the community, we have to fulfill that because we're the fire department, right? If you look at that across the country, that's what the fire department does. They throw another need out there, the fire department picks it up. And with that has come retirements, and then obviously more positions. And with those positions come younger people, not only younger in age, but younger in tenure. And our department went from a fairly senior department, and over the last 7 years, we've gone almost 83%, 85% is 5 years or less on the job. And the rest of us, the senior guys that were there before, have all promoted up to captain or are getting promoted to captain or have retired. And, we're kind of looking around and we're like, all right, well, what are we going to do now? Because now the senior guys are not senior anymore. Have been there just a shade longer than the next guy over. So, and traveling all over the country, being able to teach with other people or talk to other people just like you do, you're starting to find that that's not only my problem, that's your problem. That's a problem in California, Washington State, Maine, Massachusetts, wherever you may be. And that's where we're at right now, which is kind of crazy for the fire service. But finding that senior man, it's actually dictated by the firehouse itself. Firehouse itself will tell you if you're the senior man or not. And that's one of the things that kind of opens the door for. And then that's how I got there.
Yeah. So I know, like, I feel like if you're a fireman, you've heard the term senior man. And if you haven't, you should have to some extent. But I want to be able to define what a senior man is before we move on. So if you don't mind, just like in your opinion, what is the definition of a senior man?
Yeah, absolutely. When I'm saying senior man, I'm also talking about man, woman, whatever it is. But
Hmm.
just the senior man just kind of rolls off the tongue. But the senior man, senior firefighter, whatever you want to call this person, in my eyes, when I looked around, is the go-to person for both, not only for the officers to come down on the firefighters as far as like needs or whatever needs to be done in the firehouse, but also for the firefighters that need to go up. Hey, I have questions about X. I have questions about Y. Where is so and so? Where is, how do I do this? And that senior guy has either all the answers or knows the answers or knows where to go for the answers for the junior men. And then for the officers, they come down like, hey, the vibe of the firehouse is off today. What's up? They kind of know the whole heartbeat and the vibe of the firehouse that's going on, their shift, and they're able to pass that on. That senior person is the one consistent, sorry, the one consistent in the fire service, in your firehouse, um, day to day.
Yeah.
That's
So
my view of it.
yeah, and I would agree 100%. You've obviously lived that life. That's something that I've never lived, but talking from a guy that's relatively less tenured, when I think of a senior man, he's exactly what you said. He's the go-to guy. He's the guy that I'm going to go to before I ever go to the captain. If there's an issue, I know he's going to step up and handle it and pull some people to the side before it ever gets to the captain. He's the guy, for the most part, that I would assume leading training or coming up with the ideas, and chances are he's already checked that through the captain, and that captain trusts him. Um, Now, when we get to the, and I say problem, I'm still trying to figure this out, but the problem is where, just like we talked about, that man becomes less tenured, and he is months ahead of the guys right
Yep.
behind him, and he might be years behind the people in front of him, because that was one of the things it says. Just seemed like, and I don't know if it was COVID or whatever, but it seemed like we had, either in your situation, people have grown exponentially, or in other people's situation where those mid-tenured or more senior guys had just bounced. They left from the fire service
Yep.
altogether, because that was happening as well. And so now we're seeing uh, more of these 2 to 10 guys have to step into that role of the senior man. And I've wrestled with it a lot, and I might go back and forth on my own word, because it's kind of weird calling them the senior man when realistically they're not senior.
That's right. Well, they may not be senior, but they're senior in the firehouse, like we talked about. They're the firehouse, and by say firehouse, like the members on that shift, on that company, in that department, whatever it may be, whether you're a single engine department, a single company department with 2 engines and a ladder, um, or a large department. This is just one entity of it. That firehouse has elected them. Elected is a loose word, but put them in that spot as a senior fireman. They may just be the go-getter that's been there 2 or 3 years, that that kind of went ahead and just got as much information as possible, both history of the firehouse, history of the company, learned as much as they could about the firehouse, how things go with the rig and things like that. And on the other hand, it could be like in a lot of situations that you talk to people around the country, I'm the reason I'm the senior guy is because I was here 3 years and 2 days, and my partner, because we're a two-person company, has been here 2 years and 6 months. So,
Hmm.
and then those guys you look at them, you're like, hey man, you're the senior guy for today, or you're the senior guy for your shift, or hell, you're the senior guy for the department.
Yeah.
And it kind of that's a little weight that goes on until you start getting that experience of like day to day operations.
Yeah. Well,
So
and I can relate to that in a sense. Like, I don't want to say the senior man, but I showed up for an overtime shift one day, and it was at a triple company house. And just like your department, we run EMS as well. And a lot of times I expect to be on the ambulance because I'm a less tenured guy. And this big house, most of our triple company houses are looked at as more senior, right? Because they have a truck and an engine, and those spots, not, we don't necessarily have a constant spot, but they're more prevalent to see the senior guys on the truck. And I showed up for this shift, and I start throwing my stuff on the ambulance. And one of the guys come up to me, he's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" He's like, "Put my stuff on the ambulance." He's like, "Nah, man, you're on the truck." And I was like, "Why?" So I go find the officer, and he's like, "Bro," he's like, "You are the most senior firefighter here today." And I'm like, look around, and I'm like, "I've only been here 2 years." Like, that's, and that was, however long ago now, but that was just eye opening to me. It was just like, okay, like, I'm not sitting here claiming the fact that I'm the senior man per se, but like I am the most senior firefighter on this shift right now, or on the crew right now. And that was
correct.
pretty eye opening. So that's really when that concept started spinning in my head, and I guess it's just developed over time. I was talking with a couple friends. They knew I was going to have you on, and I'll show them some love. Some of the guys we talked about, they were from the Vigilantes group through
Yep.
Firehouse Vigilance, and I was like, "Hey, just give me some questions," because I threw this whole concept their way, and they gave me lots of good feedback. And
Awesome.
one of them was like, do you see these less tenured people as stepping into the senior man role as a problem, and like should we even be stepping into that role, or is it more of like, hey, you have to because there's no one else that's willing to step up?
So that's a great question. It's a double-edged sword if you think about it. Like there's some of the junior guys stepping up because it has to be done. It's not being fulfilled. When I came to my department 15 years ago, I left another department that I was there for 11 years. When I came to my current department 15 years ago, we were done the same way. So all the senior, more experienced guys were on the ladder truck. But the problem was they were the senior guys. They didn't really push anything forward. They were just they rode the ladder truck because they didn't want to get up at night and run the 5 or 6 EMS calls on the engines. That's why they were there. So historically, the senior guy goes to the ladder truck. Well, the younger guys started stepping up, and those guys then were like, all right, they started learning things about the firehouse, about the companies, about response areas. Let's get some training done because we started seeing it 15 years ago that there was going to be a trend where everybody's going to start retiring, and soon our department's going to go from a very tenured old department to a very young, inexperienced department. And the few of us that were there started stepping up and doing advanced training, and the new hires coming in, we would pick them up, excuse me, pick them up, pull them aside, start setting our expectations forward and tell them what we wanted to see things, and slowly started coming around to becoming the senior guy. And then you look around one day and then they look at you like, hey, you're the senior guy for the day. And at that time I was 7 years on the job. So at that department, but I was the most tenured guy in the department that day that had been on the fire service. So it was kind of a hit. So those guys that are there they step up, they're going to be the senior guy, or they're just going to have to be made that way, where it's going to be like, hey man, you don't have a choice. You've got to do what you got to do. Like your situation. Hey, you're the senior. By the way, you're the most senior guy in the department today, by tenure and by time of service. And it kind of hits you like, all right. And puts a little target on your back. Like I got shit I have to do. So it's a double-edged sword the way you look at it. You either want to do it and you start being proactive and prepping yourself for it, or you're going to be reactive like a lot of people are, and realizing, holy crap, now I am the senior man. And you start coming to realization, like I have to start doing things and kind of like putting my best foot forward every day.
I really would like to. That was kind of one of the things I had in my head, just setting yourself up for success. I personally believe that if you come into the fire service, and I get it, it's that spot is not made for everybody. I mean, it's a spot made for a leader, and everything like that. But setting yourself up in a position of success to be looked at as that senior guy one day. From day one, I mean, you have to have certain set of expectations for yourself and standards for yourself, as well as being able to elevate those around you. So, just in your opinion, like what are some ways that these rookies coming into the fire department or fire service can go about their daily lives at the fire department to set themselves up for success to be that senior guy?
So some things to do to set yourself up is sit around and ask for the expectations. One of the things that I've noticed with a lot of the younger people that have come into the fire service recently, both in my department and departments around me, and as we teach, is they want people to be held accountable for stuff, and they want their expectations to be known. And hey, if this junior guy comes in and says, "Here are my expectations of you, of the senior guy, of the officer, of the company officer, or the department itself," that's a great place to start. Okay, here's here's my expectations that I want from you as whatever it is, senior man, senior firefighter, boss, department. And then you pass those expectations on the same way. Well, okay, thank you for your expectations. Here's my expectations, whatever they may be. Start there. It's a great foundation. And then go learn and continue learning like this, like we talk about, and every podcast says it. This is a craft that needs to be learned and gain knowledge every day. It's changing every day. And by doing that, you're going to start setting yourself up for success. And people are going to start noticing that. One day the officer may give you, hey, I need you to start emptying the trash. You're the trash guy for now. Once he sees that you've done that, and successful without being told. You're doing it at your best ability. He's going to add something else to it. I need you to take the trash out and wash the dishes. I need you to take the trash out, wash the dishes. And that building block's going to start growing more and more where they're going to give you more responsibility. He may push you forward. The officer may push you forward. And by you doing that, setting yourself up like that, take classes. When I turned around and realized I was a senior guy, it hit me that I've taken classes my whole entire fire service career, excuse me, to be set up as an officer. When I first joined it, I wanted to be a battalion chief, fire chief, etc. Since then, I've smartened up, but I've set myself up to learn those things and realize that there was nothing out there for me like the guy that just wanted to be the senior guy in the firehouse. You look around, so you start picking these things up. Find those good and bad leaders to help set yourself up. What are the bad leaders that you don't want to do? What are the good leaders that you want to learn from? You can learn from both of them. They both have great things to gain from. But those are some of the couple things to start your foundation of being a good senior man, to start picking up and start developing yourself into that fire service leader, the informal fire service leader that they have, that you in your department.
I love what you said about the expectations. I'm fortunate enough to be a part of, for the last couple of years, I was part of a really good crew, and I recently transferred and still a part of a good crew. And we have the opportunity to train some of these new hires, and I get to be a part of it. And one thing that's a common theme, and it was told to me whenever I got hired on at my department, was each shift, you're as a new guy at my department, you're probably going to travel around a lot, different stations every shift. And we tell them like, hey, one thing that you need to do every single morning is go find your officer and ask what their expectations of for you are. And sometimes they fail at doing that, but it says a lot whenever they could tell you those expectations, because I truly believe like you cannot change what you cannot define. And if that officer doesn't set any expectations of you, then you don't even know if you're going to hit the mark or not. And so it does go both ways. But I think a lot of the guys are a little timid to tell people their expectations of that company officer. Uh, I had this conversation the other day, and I told him like I have an expectation of my company officers, and it gets heavy really quickly, but it's the truth when it comes down to it, because like Rob Ramirez says, the shit that never happens all the time, and at the end of the day, we're firemen, and this is a dangerous job, and so at the end of the day, my expectation of my not only my company officers but my chief officers is I'm married and I have 3 kids, and if I go to a house fire tomorrow and I don't come out of it, you, as my company officer or my chief officer, have to look my wife and 3 children in the face and tell them I have done everything in my ability to train John for this moment. Things got away from us, and it just got the best of us. And
Yep.
but you have to be truthful, and you're the one that's going to have to sleep well at night after that conversation. And so I know that gets hot, like that gets heavy really quickly, but that's the truth. And what that looks like is different on every level, right? I mean,
Yep.
if we're training and sharing knowledge and everything like that, like you're doing your job, I don't want it to seem like we have to be, on paper every second of the day. Like at the end of the day, we're firemen, but you do have to do that. Um, I've been a part of several conversations where people are just, more or less running their mouth about a new guy not living up to the expectations that we have set for him, and I don't like those conversations, and I flat out ask him like, well, does he even know like that you
Yep.
guys aren't happy with his performance, or like you just going to sit here and talk shit about him? Because once again, if he doesn't know what's expected of him, how do you expect him to live up to that?
Yeah, that's one of we'll have a conversation like and we all do. We all talk shit about each other and what have you. But the one conversation that I found to be better every day, if somebody's talking shit, if, as an officer now, it's a little different. But when I was a senior fireman, I looked at him and said, "Well, have you talked to him about it?" And pretty much, I can guarantee you on one hand, it may happen 1 or 2 times. And the rest of the time was like, no, we haven't talked to him. Well, he doesn't know what your expectations are, what you want, or what the goal is of whatever. You need to express those, and until you express those, they don't know.
Yeah.
And from the top looking down now as an officer, I have to make sure that I'm the middleman between the battalion chief and my company, and then for me to my senior man to my company to say, hey, here's the expectations, and it needs to go both. That hard conversation needs to be had, whether we're doing right or wrong. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I found that we talked about accountability, or which we'll probably get into later, is that if I set expectations for you, you set expectations for me. We need to hold each other accountable. But until those expectations are set, you really shouldn't be talking shit to anybody.
Mm,
Now, if you're saying those expectations, setting those expectations they set and everybody understands them, and then they're messing up, that's another conversation we need to have.
right.
But until that's done, the mouths need to stop in the firehouse, which is kind of hard to do. I mean, we're not black as firemen, with the deep stuff that you said there. That's the bottom dirty stuff of our job, or the other side of the dirty part of our job.
Right. And
So
I really don't want to speak on my new crew because I'm very much settling in on it, but I can very much speak on my old crew. And I worked for a really good officer. And I remember day one of me showing up, and it was a conversation. It's like, hey, what are your expectations of me? Okay, cool. Here's my expectations of you.
yep,
And that meant a lot. And it was, at the firehouse and on the fire ground. And one of the things, and I want to be able to portray this to new firefighters is like, and I want to make sure that, or how much I say this, I feel like it shouldn't be just me. Um, I'm not necessarily a black and white person, but I want to know what my expectations are on every aspect of my job. So, what do you want out of me on a fire alarm? What do you want out of me on a med call? What do you want out of me on an extrication call? What do you want out of me on a structure fire if we're assigned fire attack, we're assigned search, whatever the case may be? Like, I want to know my expectations and I want you to spell them out for me. So that way, whenever I fail, you can hold me accountable. Because at
that's
the
one
end of
of
the day,
that's one of the things we're seeing. Sorry to interrupt you, but that's
no,
one
you're
of the
good.
things we're seeing in the fire service now is with these older guys. I want to say older guys, my age and above a little bit, that are still there as captains or senior firemen. When I first joined, that didn't need to be done. Like you work, here's your job. Here's what you have to do on a fire alarm, fire, EMS run, car wreck, whatever it may be. But now you have to explain that to everybody, and trying to pass that on and get that through to other people's heads, other officers, other chief officers, and departments, is saying you have to spell everything out. And the whole thing, well, they'll figure it out on their own, just doesn't work anymore, because that's what this generation of firefighter, however old you may be, needs to know, because that's what they're used to.
Hmm.
The current department I'm with, that's one of the struggles we're having is, and I'm trying to have this conversation with battalion chiefs of of uh, of expectations. I'm like, they don't know what they don't know,
Mm.
so we have to sit and lay everything out. So you know, we're talking about, maybe predetermined arrival assignments. We're talking about things like that. Like, hey, if you're sitting in seat X, you're going to carry this on this call. You're going to do this on this call. If we're going to this type of run, this is what you're going to do. So everything's laid out. There's essentially a playbook, and they know what it is. And it's just a new way of thinking, but it's setting those expectations up of like, hey, here's your playbook. I'm giving you everything you do. Memorize this, because if you don't do what's in this playbook when it's time to make the play, then we're going to have a problem. So there's the expectations written down in your black and white, like you just mentioned, and I need you to perform them through black and white. Is there going to be some gray area? 1,000%. We have to expect that. But that's what this generation of firefighter wants, and not only wants, but needs,
Hmm.
because they not only need to know that, but they're going to have a lot of questions about it too. And then with that, well, this play didn't work this time. So what do we need to train on? Kind of gives you the playbook as well of what needs to be done, and your expectations being held up through everything else.
Yeah, so one of my friends says all the time, he says there's freedom in structure, and I 100% believe that. And that's exactly what you're talking about. Is you give a structure to these guys. They know what is expected of them. They know the playbook. I like saying that, right? And if we need to call an audible at the time of the thing, like we can. The other part of that is, they say we don't rise to the level of the occasion, we fall to the level of our systems, right? And at the end of the day, if we fall to the level of our systems, that's the baseline expectations, plan A, if you will, for those guys. And they're doing something rather than just, in the fetal position in the corner. And I think that part is huge, though, because I can relate to that. And it's not a bad thing. I just think as the fire service in general, that we have we do a really good job at explaining what something is, whether it be a skill or a piece of knowledge. And we do a really good job of explaining how we're going to do it. But we don't do a very good job of explaining why or
Yep.
when. And I could give an example is I got taught all the nozzle mechanics and flowing and moving and everything when I got hired, and looking back, like I knew how to do all that. I knew what it was, but I couldn't really tell you like why and when I would do that. And I go through Nozzle Forward with Aaron Fields, and that dude just blew my mind and is phenomenal at explaining why we would do this, right? Like why we would need to flow and move. When would we do that? Like what are the signs we're going to look to? And now it just clicks in my head, and now I know, right? And
Yeah.
I'm sure that that concept is applicable to just about anything, any skill or anything that we do. But I have say that like I'm 29 years old. But I'm still a relatively new fireman. But I still fall in the category that you're talking about. I want to have that system because
Yep.
I can operate like that. And at the end of the day, like point and shoot and let me go. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Um, and I just I want us to be able to do better. But at that, and because of the like you said, these the newer firemen, and I, like I said, I fall in that category as well. What you're saying is like I totally understand. Is we want someone to be held accountable for their actions and or inactions,
Correct.
including ourselves. I'll tell you right now, my inner circle of friends know that if I'm not hitting the mark, like they can call me out in a heartbeat because they know who the person that I want to be and the person that I claim to be. And I don't know like how we get around that the lack of accountability is what I'm trying to say. Is
Yeah.
like how can we do that, and what role can the senior man play in that?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's one of the things I struggle with on a daily basis is like because I'm tired of like because the junior guys will come up to me or the senior guy and be like, hey, why so and so did this? Why aren't they getting in trouble? But I did not the same thing, but something similar, and I'm getting hammered. Well, you may have just gotten caught, and no one else knows it, but it's the lack of that accountability. It's a struggle every day to go be like, all right, well, you keep going, then you keep going this one person, this one person, this one person. If they're not your guy or you're the senior guy, and really as the senior guy, you're an informal leader. That's one thing you have to remember that you can only kind of like recommend,
Hmm.
um, for lack of a better term, something that needs to be done. You could also have a nice conversation out the dumpster that I can't have as an officer. But you know, you have to have that tough conversation, and it may start with like your inner circle, like you just talked about. You had your inner circle, and one of my buddies in the first part of his class, he talks about you need to have people in your circle, on your side that are willing to have that tough conversation back and forth. You know, they were we were together. We're together. We've been together for a little bit this week over the last several days, and I keep talking about what I do on the side publicly to myself until it comes out. And like this podcast, well, they found out I was doing this podcast, so they were giving me shit about it, but they were having fun about it, and they were giving me a hard time. But they're also the same people that come to me and go, "Hey, man, what you said on the podcast, what you did over in this class, or what you did as you're teaching, that you're sucking ass at it. And you really need to fix it, or we need to look at a different technique because it's not being relayed right." And that's where it starts. That accountability needs to start centrally. It's yourself, and then build out. Once you're able to have those tough conversations with your really close friends, back and forth, then you could start learning how to have that tough conversation with now your crew. Hey man, it's the same thing. The boss said the boss said we need to force the door this way, or carry the medical bags this way, or stretch the hose that way. And you're not doing it right. Do we need more time training? Is this not for you? Is there something that we can try? Let's go look at some different techniques. Have that conversation, hold them accountable to that. And then, same thing for going up the ladder to your boss. Hey man, you said my expectations were this and I set my expectations for you for that. You're not holding up your end of the bargain. Is there something that I can do to help you? Is there something, are you overwhelmed? And it may be something at home, that's something at work, something that's stressing them. The one thing that you mentioned earlier is the why. Their why may have changed. What's that why? Um, but you don't know until you talk. And it takes that one time, you want to jump in the cold, everybody's talking about this cold plunge stuff. That one time, that first step, get in the cold plunge, and you could do it. It's kind of the same thing. That first time you need to have that tough conversation, it gets easier as it goes. Is it easier to have a tough conversation? No, but it's easier to initiate it and start that conversation both up the ladder and down the ladder. That needs to be done. As long as it's done respectfully and properly, and you don't, if you realize that you get to a point where discussions are become heated, and you're able to recognize that and separate yourselves. Hey, we'll come back to it. Let's take a break or whatever. it does get easier, but it's hard to do to initiate that. But that's what has to be done. Start with your inner circle and work your way out. Have those tough conversations on your group, and then you'll learn how to be better at it.
Yeah, and I think I really like this conversation mostly because I'm a leadership nerd, and in a sense of like, dude, I listen to leadership podcasts every day. I read a leadership book daily. Like my daily devotional is a Maxwell devotional. It's all based around leadership, and something I've learned is as far as being a leader goes is it's really just being a good person at the end of the day.
Right?
And there's principles that you see that it's like you said, what you don't know what you don't know, and that's what I enjoy about it. And it puts words to stuff that just might be in my head, but one of the things that I've realized, especially when it comes to having hard conversations, is you can't come out of the blue and have a hard conversation with someone. And you said it, and you without really even realizing it, is that inner circle. It's probably easy to have those hard conversations with your inner circle because we have a relationship with those people. They know that we love them and that we care about them. And how do we go about having a tough conversation up and or down? We can't until we build that relationship with that person. And
That's the
so
point.
I try to make it a point to even the guys above and below. It's just like if I've never really worked with them, is just try to get to know them a little bit because that's the way it starts. Is ask them about themselves. I brought this up in a different podcast. It's just like we as people, especially as firemen, we love to talk about ourselves. Just ask us, we'll tell you, right? Like even the most humble guy is going to open up and tell you about them and their life and what's going on, and that's just a building block and foundation of them and being able to build that relationship to if just in case one day you ever have to have that tough conversation, you can.
Yeah.
And I think that part's huge. I really do. Because without relationships, you really can't do a whole lot as the senior man. Um, when the part that I believe we will have a lot of tension with, if you will, by these younger tenured firemen uh, stepping up into that senior man role is from the guys above us, right? We have them everywhere across the entire fire service. We have the tenured guy that's not a senior man. And I talked to several people, and some people think I have it figured out, and I promise you I don't. They ask me, like, I'm stepping into this role and teaching the new guys this, but I'm catching slack from the guys that are older than me and more tenured than me. And a lot of times I don't have an answer for people because I feel like each of those situations are delicate and probably pretty specific. Um, but surely you faced something like that in your career or have seen it happen. Do you know of a way that has been successful in handling those situations?
Yeah. That's a great that's yeah, that's excellent. The thing I refer to it as is the bump on the log. You've been sitting on this log for however long your career is now, and then somebody else comes along on your log, and they start like moving around and doing things, and then you all of a sudden want to get up and start want to do something or give them shit about what they're doing. Don't try to voice your opinion now when you've been sitting around for 15 or 20 years, not doing anything with your career, just kind of going day by day, and someone's trying to make it better for not only you, but for that person and for the people beneath them and to the side of them, to the other company or across the floor, wherever it may be. Um, it's a hard thing to do, but at the end of the day, the junior guys that are being trained by that senior firefighter and are going to look at that guy, that bump on the log and be like, well, you're not doing anything. So why should I listen to you? How do we turn that around? You look at this old bump on the log and go, well, show me how to do it better. Let me see how you do it. Please teach me. You've obviously been doing this, but put that ball back in their court and have them take that ball, and they can either take it and play ball with it, or they can hand it back to you and go, I'm good, and they step away, and that's where the line's divided. It's drawn right there. But put it back in their court. Be, again, professional and polite, but throw it in their court. Be like, okay, if you're protecting line for the day, throwing ladders or forcing a door or whatever it is, one of the 7,000 things we have to do on the fire service, throw it back in their court if they start giving you shit. Be like, all right, well, I'm pulling line this way. Well, you can't do it that way. Well, show me how to do it, or show me how better way to do it, or show me how you do it. And maybe we could come up with a great plan together to teach these younger guys, because in the next 5 minutes, we could all be doing this together.
Yeah,
So, that's the easiest thing that I found when we were doing training like that. Um, is they would come out and go, "Why are you doing it that way?" Well, this is what I've learned. This is what's easiest for me, and we're trying to pass it on to somebody else. Well, that's I don't do it that way. Rah, 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 rah. But you look at it and go, "Okay, well, show me how you do it. Help me learn, and let's pass it on to these guys so we all can do it right together." Sometimes they helped. Sometimes they just grumbled, said some words, and walked away. It is what it is. You
yeah.
know, that's where the line's drawn, and that's how we have to move forward from there.
I think that my train of thought got lost. My full-time job, they just caught a house fire, and it's A shift.
Ah,
I got off this morning, and A shift has been catching all the freaking house fires. So I was like, son of a gun. Uh,
happens all the time.
I know. So, anyways, back on track here. That I've faced some of the situations like that, and really I work with just I feel like I'm blessed, so a lot of these things like I don't really speak from experience, but I've experienced them in certain ways, and um, a lot of times like I have found and what I've talked to people about and that aren't in my situations, but I just tell people is like those guys that do that or they just sit over there and they just run their mouth, but they're not willing to come out there and do it. Like a lot of time they're just threatened. And
Yep.
how do you solve them feeling threatened? Is exactly what you said. Try to include them, honestly,
Yep.
because at the end of the day, like if we don't, I fully, and I'm haven't always been the best at that. Full disclaimer here, but like if we I fully respect the tenure of the guys at my fire department, and I think we should respect the tenure of the people across the fire service. And if we don't include them or if we try to include them or ask them questions and they still blow us off, at that point it is not our problem anymore. It's
Yep.
theirs. And that's the one thing that I've wrestled with because I had a conversation with someone the other day. It's just like we have all of these retired firemen that taught or that worked at FDNY, that worked at Houston, that worked at insert whatever large department or even small departments that are still so passionate about the fire service. And they're teaching weekend after weekend, every single day. Think about how many guys are of their tenure in the fire service with the knowledge and experience that they have that are just disgruntled so they don't want to do what those guys are doing.
Yeah.
Like
Uh,
I'm
It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad we have those people, but I just like think about like what we're missing because this person has the same amount of experience, the same amount of tenure, the same experiences, and maybe a different aspect to be able to teach us something, but they're not going to because they were burned by admin or they have a bad taste in their fire service, bad taste in their mouth because of the fire service. Like
Yeah.
the number's probably astronomical. I mean, when we
Yeah.
look at it.
It's
So,
great. It's crazy to think, but again, you don't know unless you talk to them and find out why.
mhm.
Maybe we have out the back of our firehouse, we've got a red bench. We call it red bench time. And, maybe a conversation for the bench out back or the fire pit out back or out front on the front bumper on the apron at night. Like, hey man, what happened? It may be just as simple that, and you open that door with just that little push, that door flings open, and you may find out a world of not only information but a world of knowledge that they bring you.
Yeah,
So,
and I I've really tried to hone in the art of that, the whole difficult conversations and just trying to get, like I said, build relationships and got to know people. And it's been a while now, and I'm not going to mention his name, but there was some grumbling going on first thing in the morning, and it was a guy that's kind of known for just kind of being a little disgruntled. And I just straight up asked him, like, man, why do you hate this place so much? And it caught him off guard. And
yeah,
I was like, wow, that guy hates me now. I was like,
yeah,
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said anything because we didn't really talk after that. But a little bit later, I was out sitting at the picnic table and he came and found me. He's like, hey man, I don't. Then we talked about it and he told me some of the reasons why he was a little frustrated. And it's just like, I totally understand. And like, yeah, you're right. If I was in your shoes, I would be frustrated as well. And so that experience opened my eyes to say like, this person's not just that. Like there's a reason why they're in a bad mood or whatever the case may be, but we just have to figure out why. And then once we do, then we can kind of bring them along on our path and be able to string them with us down that, the path of why we're here, what we're doing matters. It doesn't matter what's going on elsewhere. Like we're here to take care of business.
that's exactly right. And you never know. And you may get an ally in this conversation. You may turn from a disgruntled person,
Yeah.
angry person, to not only the fire service department or whatever, but you may get an ally, and you can start, he may start, riding their coattails, for lack of better terms, but he can show you stuff. You can show them stuff. But yeah, just to open in a conversation. And the heart of this whole discussion that we're having about the senior man is just having a general conversation about this person, whatever it may be. You talked about building relationships with crews, and with the way our department's changing, we're getting new people every so often, but it's a lot. But these people range from young to old, and just have to ask them about their life, because not if it's an older person coming in the fire service that they're just like, hey, it's something new. Talk about their life experiences. That's what we're seeing, is like your life experiences can add a lot to it, and
Yeah.
and finding out about them, their family, their background, that builds that relationship and trust, and then that opens up the door even
Yeah.
more. So you just keep building on this stuff, and your foundation, your house starts being built bigger and bigger. And here we are now, and you've had this relationship. You know why things are done. You know how things are done. You're helping each other. It's a two-way street now. But the basic conversation is where it all starts. Hey man,
Yeah.
how we doing today?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not often that I say something profound or something that I'm like, wow, that made sense. But I was having this conversation yesterday, and we were talking about just like why our experience doesn't like the new stuff coming in, right? Like the fire service is very much blue collar, and we still want it to be, but there's all of this science being introduced into the fire service that some of the older guys or more tenured guys they don't like. They're not used to. Like they walk in and put the fire out. It's not that hard, right? Wet stuff on the red stuff. And so we were talking about that, and I was like, I said something, and I hope I get it right now, but I was like, I personally believe that we cannot discredit tenure's experience. We cannot, because there is obviously something to it. They've been doing it for 30 freaking years. We would
Yep.
be ignorant to say, hey man, I know you did it successfully for 30 years, but this is what we're doing now. Like that's not the way it works. But we also have to hold the value of the science and everything coming in, and find a way to bridge those two together, to where this guy doesn't feel like we're saying you did it wrong for the last 25 years. This is the way we're doing it now. But we still are recognizing that this science stuff does matter, but we need to find a way to meet in the middle. And
That's
I think we
exactly
get a
right.
lot of people on board with that if we go about it the right way. Because if
Yeah,
not, then we're just going to end up with more disgruntled senior guys.
that's right.
So something else I wanted to hit on. This is going by way faster than I expected to, because like I said, it's something I've been thinking about. So I wanted to hit on this because I feel like as firemen and as people that have time on people, that conversation down the chain of command happens really easily, because at the core of it, we can use our seniority, if you will, over them, and so it's easy to have that conversation for me at least. But that conversation going up the chain of command, it's necessary. Uh, there's a quote that says, "No team will be as good as it can be without honest conversation, not only down but up the chain of command." And a lot of people are intimidated by having that conversation with their officer, with their battalion chief, with their chief in general. So you've lived it, you've done it. I know at the base of it, it's a relationship, but at the end of the day, it's still scary as shit trying to go into your officer's office and say, hey, man, you're not hitting the mark. At the end of the day, what are some techniques or experiences that you've had relaying that message up the chain of command?
Yeah, I could give you my experiences and some things that I've learned with it, and they don't always work 100% of the time. This is just kind of some stuff that I've come up with. But go in and ask, hey, is there something that's gone, what's going on today? How are you, how are you doing today? A simple thing. If you worked with your officer long enough, if they're having a bad day. If something's going on at home, something, even if you don't have a true relationship besides a work relationship, you'll know if something bad is going on. And just, again, how are we doing today? Is there something that we could do different? Is there something you want to do? Is there something that needs to be done or that needs to be changed for us to make things a little better for you? Those are some of the things that I go in and approach with. Does it suck? 1,000%, because you better be ready for what the backlash is going to be. And I say backlash, but it's like, It could be something that you've done in general versus something that may not even been done. And then that officer's having the same problem of trying to come up with words to say it as well. Yeah. So we were talking about just having a conversation. It may be tough for you going into your officer or to the officer, to have that conversation, but it also may be tough for them as well because they need to have a conversation with you and they just don't know how to approach it. And maybe it's something you've done that you didn't know you did wrong or against what they wanted for their expectations. Again, it's something that has to be done and said, but having just open the conversation and being respectful about it. I was like, hey, Chief, hey, Cap, what's going on today? And it may be something as simple as are they into baseball, are they into football, are they into hockey, golf, whatever it may be, car racing or mowing grass. Hey, how's the lawn business? Grass looks like we should be cutting it soon. Just bring something up that tweaks their interest in it. Again, it's going to be tough, but once you open that door, be prepared for and I say backlash, and I don't mean it as bad, but be prepared for that conversation to come down that it may not all be good towards you. So,
Yeah, and I think I had someone told me a story once, and I want to say it was like a person I know, but for all I know, I listen to so many podcasts, it could have been a podcast. But they said they were having some issues with their company officer, and that company he decided like, okay, it's getting bad enough now to where I need to go in and have a conversation with him. And he goes in there and he's like, hey, Cap, can I talk to you for a second? And the Cap's like, sure, hey, come on in. And he's like, man, you're just missing the mark. One way or another, he's telling him that he hasn't been happy with the way things have been going and this, that, and another. And he's like, actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I've been needing to have this conversation with you. And it like turns out like that guy was the cancer at the crew and he just had no clue that what he was doing. Right.
yeah.
And and the story just went like, he was having some stuff at home going on and one thing led to another. He didn't realize it was affecting him at work. And so that was a perfect segue for what you were just talking about, because that stuff happens. I mean, we have to be self-aware at some point to make sure that we're doing we're holding up our end of the bargain as well. So
yeah, it's a hard thing to do, to be self-aware. I mean, it's hard to look at yourself and try to be objective with some things that you could be doing better, or even doing it all until that's figured out. Who knows?
So a couple of quick questions. Like I said, that these are just some short, probably easy way to answer them questions about the senior man. As the senior guy in your firehouse, what are some things that you can do to set the tone for the environment at the house?
Yeah, easy things. Set a schedule for the day. Talk to the officer. Try to get in. When I was a senior guy, I was always there at least an hour early. I at least talk to the crews that were in there. The firehouse I was assigned to when I was a senior guy was pretty busy, so people were always up, so it really didn't matter. But those guys were up to find out what happened the day before, if they caught any work, they caught bad fire, interesting call, alarms or whatever it may be. Find that out. See who can be called in sick, where the assignments are going to be for the day. Try to get in the right headspace, and then from there, you move on and then talk to the captain, the officer for the day, and be like, hey, lay the crew out. You as a senior fireman, the vibe and the heartbeat of the crew and the companies that you work with, and find out how things are going today. What if there's an overtime shift or something like that, and they had a bad night last night? That's your time. That's your chance to step it up. Go to the officer, and be like, hey, Tommy they were up all night on the fire, or he was on the EMS unit. He got held overtime, forced for mandatory overtime the next day, and they're on the end. He's going to need to lay down and take a rest at least once today. Go into the officer and see what the plan is. If they have training, what training schedule. If there's nothing scheduled, try to lay something out for at least one small drill a day. But lay it out. Have that schedule set in your head and kind of lay it out with the officer every day. And that helps a lot of things. They're like, oh, it's something to look forward to instead of just lunch or dinner. You're looking forward to maybe training or something that's going to be done. Excuse me.
I think we're coming up on an hour anyways here before long. So I just have a couple more questions that I wanted to get thrown your way.
Yeah, I'm good.
So I'm sure this probably hasn't changed much, but as a senior man or now as a captain, what are some of the non-negotiables you have every day at the firehouse?
Yeah, non-negotiable. That's funny because that you bring that up. It's something I've been kind of thinking of as well. What my non-negotiables are every day. Excuse me, sorry.
You're good.
Um, we need to drill every day. Excuse me. Need some type of drill every day, whether it be looking at a building, walking through a building, setting up, even if it's just walking around and looking at hose layouts, or if we get right now, get our ladder truck into certain places. And the drill doesn't need to be hard or long, an hour at the most for that simple drill. Excuse me. Um, that's one of my non-negotiables. Obviously, taking time for yourself throughout the day, whether to rest or, work out, take a nap, but reading or studying, another non-negotiable. Needs to be taking time for yourself every day. Non-negotiables, we got drilling, take an hour for yourself every day, and I want you to be ready to go to work anytime we go out the door. Ready to go to work. If we're going on a fire alarm, it's always on fire. If we're going on an EMS call, they're always in cardiac arrest. If we're going on an EMS call and we run up on something, be ready to do that. Just be ready to have your mindset change, and be professional. Those are my four non-negotiables. I was taught at an early age to treat everybody like your mom, dad, grandmother, grandfather, and uncle. Be professional, be polite. That's all we want in the fire. And for me,
Yep.
you can bitch about them all you want back in the firehouse. You can bitch about whatever back in the firehouse in closed doors, whoever you want to bitch about. But while you're on scene with somebody, be professional. That's their emergency at that time. That's not your emergency. We're there for them. You're at the bottom line, like we all say, you're here for the citizens. So yeah, those are my four non-negotiables
Awesome.
that
I
I
like to
hold.
hear that. As a senior man, what is, in your opinion, the most important character trait to have?
Yeah, core character trait. Being open, honest, and having good communication skills. Um, People are going to come to you with all types of problems. I found that being a senior man, we solved everything from divorces to financial problems, and everything in between. But having an open, honest conversation and being able to communicate with these people to find out their backstory and really dig into it and just being really sympathetic and empathetic about their situation was the best thing to do. You gain more trust and more, got further with the people, uh, the easier word to talk to. And gain that trust they're going to come to you for other issues. I'm really struggling with this Halligan bar. Help me with this. Struggling with whatever. Mental health, that's an easy one. I could trust you now to come at me with, I'm having a bad day. But being able to having this good, easy communication skills and being honest with them, those are the two things that I found, that work best for me. I mean, there's a myriad of other things like knowledge of the fire service, the firehouse, and all that other stuff, obviously. But again, that all comes with communication and being open and honest with them. If you don't know something, you don't know. It's okay. Like that was one of the best things, that I found. That got me more traction, when I was talking to a couple younger guys. They asked me something. I was like, I really don't know that. I've never experienced that. I don't know anybody that's experienced that. I don't know anybody that's had problems with this. But we can find out, and we'll find out together.
Oh
And
yeah,
that carried more weight and more water further along than anything I'd ever done before.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's what I realized. I was like, holy cow.
I'm glad you brought something back up because I as soon as you said it earlier, it's like at the beginning of the podcast, I was like, boom, I like that. And it's knowing the history of your firehouse and fire department because that's something that I'm somewhat of a history buff as it is, but I like to have the knowledge of my firehouse. And up until recently, sorry, I'm gonna turn something on real quick. Oh, I guess I can't. Oh well. Um, Up until recently, I was able to. Uh, I was at the same firehouse for the last 3 years or so, and that firehouse was over or almost 100 years old. It was built in 1936, and like just through the yeah, just the guys that worked there before me, I've learned about that station. Like the basement's our gym now, but it used to be a jail back in the day, like a women's jail, and yeah,
Yeah.
just all these things. Like we still have the original brass poles that we still use every day. We shine the brass every Saturday and clean the brick floors. Like it's this whole thing, and it's just like whenever you know the history behind your fire department, it does develop a sense of ownership, right? Like
Yeah.
that's my fire department, it's my firehouse, and I think that part's important. So I'm glad you brought that up again.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest things. I love. I'm very fortunate and very lucky that I get to travel all over and get to teach and talk with firefighters from all over the country, which is one of the neatest things to do. And then you go find out about why people do things in their firehouse for some simple things. It makes that each individual department pretty cool. Like there's one department we were talking the other day. There's one department that we've been to that when the probation, I think it's probationary member. Don't hold me to that. They'll crucify me if I'm wrong. But a probationary member, they make a potato soup, and everybody comes at midnight from retirees, the entire department, and they're a pretty big city. The entire department comes by, and the probationary member that's coming off probation, everybody has potato soup at midnight, and that's a tradition they have, and it's something that's pretty cool. So there's small things that you find out why they do things. It's pretty neat, and it makes the fire service even better than what you knew before you walked in that door and ask questions. And that's what I love about tissue wire, fire trucks, radio, wire net forces. All that shit's kind of cool too, but it's the individual stuff at each firehouse that's kind of different. Like another one, they have the where I'm at now. They have a meal called the firehouse. That's the term, and it's the same thing with the exception of a couple changes depending on who the chef is. It's the same thing. So if like somebody asks, what do we have for dinner? It's like the firehouse. They know exactly what it's going to be, which was again pretty awesome to find that out.
No,
So
that's
it's kind
cool.
of, the small things like that make the fire service great, and that's what I love about it.
That's cool. So Jess, this has been awesome, man. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. Uh, I feel like we've only scraped the surface of this whole conversation. So I would love to revisit this, whether it be on another podcast or just with you personally, at some point, because like I said, I've really enjoyed it, and there's so much more to it that really we could get into and probably talk for 5 hours versus just
Oh yeah,
one.
yeah.
So, uh, any words of wisdom, any piece of advice you would offer just someone about to step into that role or wanting to step into that role of the senior man?
Yeah, once you finally realize you're the senior man, hang on. It's an awesome roller coaster, but enjoy the ride because one of my very good friends we get to teach with, he just retired at 28 years, and he looked at me as we hugged at his retirement party. He said it was gone in the blink of an eye, just like a roller coaster. It only lasts for a short amount of time, but once you hop on that roller coaster, being a senior man, hang on because it's awesome. Um,
Mm.
and
That
then when you're in that role, learn as much as you can and never stop learning because this job is fucking phenomenal.
They gave me chills. It gave me chills. Man, Jess Rodzinka, 27 years. He's truly the senior man. If I know that if you are the conversation that we had, like that's 100% true. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. I'm excited to have you as a contact now. That's one of my favorite parts about doing this is
Yeah,
just being able to text you whenever I need to now. So,
absolutely. Anytime.
any upcoming classes you're giving or anything like that?
Yeah, we've got some local stuff we have coming up. I'll be lecturing at the Embrace the Resistance in Virginia, which is it's in central around the metro area, Richmond metro area. That's in May. And then we've got a truck school coming up for anyone that's in truck school, both at a small volunteer department that does a hell of a job at the end of April for its training days. And then we have another truck school in Bedford in November. In between, it's spotty. And like I said, you can always reach out to me. Anybody that's listening, I'm on all the social medias, and John, is always, my phone's always on for you, brother. It's been a pleasure and an honor for this one.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Guys, Tailboard Misfits podcast. We'll see you on the next one. Thank you for listening.